Welcome to live action here now. This is the lead group of riders. They got away more or less together after about 38 miles. There's a lot of names to give you, 16 in all. Costa, Van den Dert, Vinokurov, Edvald Bozenhagen of Team Sky in a breakaway at last. Jeremy Roy, Jaroslav Popovic, Arishiro, the only Japanese rider. Adam Hansen, the Australian. David Miller is there again from Garmin Sharp. And Michael Albacini is the man that's gone up from Orica Greenedge. Sprinter from Italy, Luca Paolini, Borkmans, Noyens, Kroon, and, take a deep breath, Gresh and Julian Fouchard. That's the break for you. 16 of them up, and at the moment they are absolutely flying across. This is one of the riders here. This looks like it is Steve Cummings, who went down here, the British rider. We had this crash earlier on. You saw it on our earlier segment with Liam and Bob. It just happened. It's apparently it was a dog went into the peloton. I don't know if we can see it on our pictures, but it caused the pile-up, and the message is don't let your dog off its lead. It slipped its leash, actually. It's on the left there. You can see him now, and there's a ricochet. Now, whether he touched the rider, whether the fact they spotted him and ran into each other, that is a point of conjecture here. But unfortunately, it's left a lot of the riders from Team BMC. But the most important man caught out was Denis Menchov there, and he's had his leg, arm bandaged, and he's raced back into the peloton. He has rejoined the peloton. But, you know, a moment's inattention, and here we go again. We've left the mountain, so why not go back to crashing? Because that seems to be the story of this year's Tour de France. The Sky rider also riding away there was Richie Porte, caught again. It looks like a Pyrenean mountain dog over on the left. Just met up with the friends, and then somebody comes running over with the leash that he did, in fact, slip out of. This was Gilbert taking on his new job as boxer as he walked over to see the people involved. But, you know, his adrenaline is riding high at the moment. And Jean Lalonde, who is his manager, trying to lead him back to the car before he gets run over by the Russian Team Katusha car. So he's on his way. They're all back in the peloton, and a little bit of skin left on the road. But basically, this is the arm, in fact, of Denis Menchov, the Russian rider. Menchov now back in that peloton and just riding on the back wheel there of Cedric Pinault. Peloton riding, absolutely flying is a better word today, because they have been ahead of schedule. They must have been inspired by the fly past of the new A380, which was built right by where they started today.
Yeah, they were accompanied by the Patrouille de France, and all that, I think, Phil, because the French President Francois Hollande was at the start this morning, and I think that was in his honour, and of course in the honour of the city of Blagnac.
Yes, that is the Aerospatiale Centre, where they built all the famous aeroplanes there. I think Concorde, the French version of Concorde, was built there many years ago as well. It's not our first visit to that area either. They've always loved the Tour de France near Blagnac. Anyway, they're underway. The gap is hovering. In fact, it's another day when I think my computer's frozen, because we're not going either forward or backwards right now.
We're just coming back to Blagnac. If you ever remember that very famous victory salute of Juan Antonio Fletcher when he pulled back the arrow as if it was an arc, that was on the aerodrome just outside of Blagnac as well.
So there we are. The yellow is for danger. That's the gendarme. One rider going down the right-hand side. He's Spanish, so he probably doesn't understand what the flag means as they go back together. Well, we'll take a break now, and when we come back, we'll go through the Cadillac predictions with you. I managed to snick a point on Bob Roll yesterday, but don't tell him. We'll see you in a minute. As that's the way they'll come, straight at the camera, as we go back out on course now. 71 kilometres left to go, just over 44 miles still to race. They have been absolutely flying at around about 40 miles an hour, picking up this tailwind, can you believe? Just on this little rise at the moment, Paul, but with 14 teams in the breakaway, and the breakaway now moving towards 3 minutes, all of a sudden the gap has started to open, and Matt White, the director in the team car of the Orica Greenedge team, has just said to well, I've just heard him say he doesn't think they'll catch them now.
Well, the thing is, there's no big team will come and do the pacemaking. I don't think that with two riders in the breakaway, Lotto Belisol will come and do the chasing. I don't think that Sky will, because they've got their man Bozenhagen in there, so it may well be that they could now be at the point where they're going to crack or snap the elastic. Most of the undulations are behind us, but it's actually quite a tricky course over the final 50 or 60 kilometres, because we've got a little drop down into a valley, then it's a big plateau before we get to the outskirts of Brive-la-Gaillarde.
Yeah, and with 16 in the breakaway, if they get to those last two fourth category climbs, which are only a kilometre long, but one of them is 1 in 10, so it's quite steep. If they get there as a group, they're going to hit each other to thin that group out before they get down to the finish for sure. Well, there's the peloton. They're on a nasty little drag here now, which... yeah, I guess it is on our contour, just looking at the contour, but it is a long way up and there's no reward at the top. We'll see here if this is where the breakaway pulls clear, as we just have a little look in the breakaway here at Jeremy Roy. This is the front 16.
Let Bell take you out to the ball game. 1,500 ball games with up to 1,000.
July the 28th, Major League Soccer continues on the NBC Sports Network, rising... There's the peloton. The gap come down slightly to 2.25 minutes, so it's up and down. This is Cedric Pinault here. He's had a problem again today. He's been up to the doctor. Now he's going to have a word with his team car. Has a problem with his left eye, but it seems to be okay now as he pedals back up to the peloton. This is touch and go for the breakaway today. The last hour we've got these two fourth category climbs. They're springboards. They're quite steep, although they're only fourth category, and they're only half a mile long. Perfect springboards though now to race for the finish. Now if it does come down to sprint finish, we might see the return of some familiar sprinters' names, so why not Matthew Goss? Well, let's find out, because before the start today he was talking with Steve Perina.
Haven't found a sprint team yet that thinks they can get over the top with their sprinter. Everyone playing possum, or is there a chance?
I don't know, I guess we'll find that out, but you know, it's definitely an up and down day. It's a day that can be a breakaway or a sprint, so we have to just wait and see. You know, depends on who's in the breakaway, how many's in the breakaway. There's a lot of different options today.
Obviously for you guys, you want to get a stage win. Is this one you cannot let pass by?
For sure, we're not going to just sit up and let it go. If we've got somebody in the breakaway, then they can usually finish it off pretty well. We've got a bunch of good guys for that. And if it comes back for a bunch sprint, then I'll definitely give it a try.
Well, we'll find out, because now there's a lot more interest here. This is not looking good for the breakaway, because Euskadi have got nobody in the break, have come to the front as well now. So to AG2R Mondial, also the French Sayer Sejourne. This is looking a bit more serious. Well, the pressure's gone on now, Paul. A number of teams have come to the front, all of the teams with nobody up front by the look of it.
Well, I'd wait for a while, because I think once they get it down to the 1.5 or 1 minute margin, you will see a change in colour at the front end of that line, because that line will all of a sudden become lime green. They did a lot of work yesterday, Lucas Cannondale, and they tried to set the victory for their climber, and that was Vincenzo Nibali. He had a bad day, and everybody can have a bad day during the Tour de France, but they will then try and favour Peter Sagan, because Peter Sagan, I have to say, at 22 years of age, Phil, has not had a bad day so far in this Tour de France, and it's an ideal finish for him, especially if they go hard on the climb and manage to get rid of a couple of guys like Andre Greipel and Mark Cavendish. But towards the end of the tour like this, guys like Cavendish and Andre Greipel can usually get over a small fourth category climb.
Well, coming through the front now for the Rabobank team is Steven Kruijswijk. Strong man. They haven't got a ride in the breaker. A little bit of a surprise, but they've only got 4 riders left, and they've had one win to save their faces with Luis Leon Sanchez about 5 or 6 days ago. But the breakaway, that was into Foix as we entered the Pyrenees. But the field clearly are just seeing how this chase goes along then. It's come back to just over 2 minutes.
I'll tell you what, Phil, the main field, even the breakaway, are absolutely storming along today. I mean, the average speed, 45 kilometres an hour, 27.5 miles an hour, really is a fast day. And there's a lot of riders within that main field, especially Bradley Wiggins, Chris Froome, Vincenzo Nibali, Jürgen van den Broek. They will be hiding in the peloton this afternoon, trying to make sure that they can save as much energy as possible, because the individual time trial tomorrow is going to be very, very important for those guys.
Yes, and the big boys, they all get to start last, the reverse order of the standing, so the 2 British riders will be the last 2 riders to start. These are the leaders going through the town at the moment, being welcomed by a very, very nice crowd. Hot, sultry condition today, but the wind a little bit favourable. Although, judging by those flags, it's coming now across from the left-hand rear of the road to them. So they're going to keep at it now because they will know the chase has started, and it started with enough time to bring them back inside 38 miles to go. Putting his hand in the back pocket there, that is Patrick Gretsch. He's in the breakaway today for Argus Shimano. We'll see how they get on after this break. And it's probably why the leaders are staying safely in the peloton. They're saving what's left of their strength now for that time trial tomorrow. The peloton, though, is hovering. It's about 1.5 minutes, slightly more, 1:40. Well, the leaders are on the undulations, these wide, fast roads. They were built for a high-speed bike race. Now we can swoop down. There are 16 riders on this 18th day in the lead. And there are some big candidates here because Team Sky have allowed Edvard Bozenhagen to take his place in the breakaway. David Miller is up here as well. A good sprinter in Chris Bookmans and Karsten Kroon and Patrick Gretsch. It could be a very interesting race, a real pursuit in progress at the moment.
Checking out the position of Popo. I'm not sure that I would try that. Popo is Jaroslav Popovic, and he was trying to pop off the front there, but that looked rather precarious to me, but efficient and aerodynamic.
Well, they'll be diving down here now at around about 40 miles an hour, over 60 kilometres an hour on a descent like this without any problem at all. Could be even quicker.
Well, they go through the small town of Lanzac, which is the one where they're just coming into now, and then they will get into the town of Souillac, across the bottom of the valley fall, and then it's onto the Côte de Souillac, which is the next climb of the day. 4th category, 1 point available, and of course at 2.5 kilometres long.
Well, absolutely on schedule here for an arrival on the fastest time schedule of the day as they come into Lanzac. And they come in at 12 minutes past 3, and that's the time they were due.
Well, you've got to figure out how the organisers knew that, because 45 kilometres an hour was one of the average times that they put down in the timetable. And I, for one, would not have expected it to be that fast down towards the end of the Tour de France. But when they put together the timetable, they know roughly what the genuine prevailing winds are going to be like and how fast the race is likely to unfold. And so today, they're almost spot on again.
They're absolutely right. A little bit of hills in the distance, and we've got a couple of them to climb before the finish. So 16 riders are ahead of the field. We're closing in on the climb of Souillac. It's called the Côte de Souillac, and that now is only 5 kilometres away. On the climb now, the Côte de Souillac, which takes us to 180 kilometres, 190 miles in to the 138-mile day, and they are, as expected, splitting up. Well, we're looking at the President of France here, Francois Hollande, newly elected and enjoying his first day on the Tour de France as President.
Yes, it looks like he's going to be as big a cycling supporter as Monsieur Sarkozy was. He was at the start line, Phil, to see the flyover of the Airbus 380 with the Patrouille de France, and now he's enjoying a day behind the breakaway.
Well, this is a big race for the French economy, the Tour de France now, because it brings in tens of thousands of foreigners onto French soil for the month of July. Now the break is happening here. The Côte de Souillac. It's everybody scampering to hang on to David Miller on this climb. Miller knows he's got to use these climbs as the springboard. There's this one, then there's a gap, and we go one more before the finish.
Well, Jelle Venender, I'm surprised to see him sitting at the back. He's number 119. He's a very good climber. He won a stage in the Tour de France last year at the top of a big mountain finish. And the man who was put into a little bit of difficulty there was Edvard Bozenhagen. And that's not really a surprise, Phil, when you bear in mind the amount of work he's done for Team Sky throughout this 3-week race.
It must feel very strange for him racing for a stage win rather than racing as a pacemaker for Bradley Wiggins. And a little bit of a relief, but that's Arashiro who's gone. He's supposed to be a sprinter.
Well, I tell you what, that's a great move by him, Phil. He's being chased there by Rui Costa. We were talking a little earlier about all the flags we see from all over the world, Phil, at the Tour de France, but the last couple of days it was really quite interesting to see the Japanese supporters camping out in the finishing line.
Absolutely right, yes, and they're speaking French as well, I might add.
Well, one man who knows a lot about the world is David Miller. He was born in Malta, grew up in Hong Kong, and came to Europe to start racing a bike when he found that he was actually quite good at it in Hong Kong. He used to go across the mainland and ride on the tracks around there before being convinced to try out road racing.
Well, the order over the top is Arashiro, Costa, then Miller, bringing up that other group there as we continue to have a look at the beautiful arc. This is the viaduct of La Bresse.
Again, one of the great architectural achievements in this part of the world, originally built in 1891 to cross the river Borez, and it's 32 meters high, total length of 571 meters, 30 arches of a 15-meter span.
The riders now, the peloton is heading up to that same climb. The gap is not that much at 125, but it isn't closing down as fast as they might wish it. And you see the peloton here on the slope now. Let's see if they push it on this climb, because the leaders certainly did under the impetus there of Arashiro.
Well, it's interesting, Phil, just coming through that town behind. A very famous sports journalist came from the town of Suec, Roger Couder, who died in 1984, and he was very, very famous for his rugby commentary. And just like Eddie Waring used to say, it's an up and under, he used to talk about allez les petits, go my little boys.
They make things famous, don't they? Paul's his suitcase in the courage. What's it?
Suitcase of courage.
Oh, that's the one, yeah. Yes, well, we're carrying on, and now Bozenhagen is pushing on. This big man here, they call him the animal on the Sky team. He just never seems to slow down, but they're now coming across to him. Looks like Luca Paolini. Won't want him along because he's a sprinter too.
Well, he just at the last minute and full effort there saw a team helper at the side of the road. The team helper thought he was ignoring Edvald Bozenhagen, so he pulled the bottle back in again. Anyway, he didn't get the drink that he was looking for there, and you know, they've opened up that gap a little bit more to 1 minute and 28 seconds. Bozenhagen, by the way, his other nickname, Phil, is the Bodog, Eddie the Bodog, and that's the teammates of Team Sky who call him that, and they mean it with every bit of respect.
Well, it's much easier to call him the Bodog on television, Edvald Bozenhagen. It's so much more shorter. Just looking, he wants more. He realised the others were coming. He didn't really want Paolini to go away with him anyway, because he's a very fast sprinter, Paolini. Just watch this. This is how not to do it. Oh, well, the guy was from Sky, but he didn't realise the man in the white jersey. Actually, yes, that's a Sky team rider, and even though he's got a white jersey on, he needed that bottle. That's all for the peloton on the same climb, riding this with a little bit more steady speed, shall we say, just trying to peer up over the summit of our camera. British flags are flying high, the Scottish flags are flying, but the Scotsman's gone through. That was David Miller. This is Bozenhagen, still under pressure at the front. He wants to try and get something going. He's saying, come and catch me if you can, because he knows this peloton, the other peloton behind, are going to really push now on these climbs. Look at this now. There's Sylvester Smith here driving on for the Liquigas Cannondale team, because they're now thinking they've got a chance to get Peter Sagan in for the kill today. A lot of hard work being done by the peloton. It's not being reflected yet, because that move by Bozenhagen has kept the group away. 1:38 is the gap now. This is going to be a touch-and-go chase. This is not a regular breakaway peloton in a stage of the Tour de France. These are two groups who both have desires on the finishing line. Still under pressure at the front. We've now got another attack here by Lotto's Van Aert. Flying through the countryside, they speed into the department of the Corrèze today. Just over 20 miles left to race. Look at these boys go. They've never allowed this breakaway to escape out of sight, and yet they're finding it extremely difficult to bring them back into line. It's still 1 minute and 24 seconds. So 1 minute 23 they're now saying. We're looking at the leading group here. Paul, this is one of the best chases I think we've seen the whole 3 weeks of the Tour. Everybody wants to win a stage of the Tour de France before Paris.
Yeah, and there are so many teams with nothing to write home about, that they've got to get the last bit of energy left in their bodies after 3 weeks of racing out. And that's why we're seeing so many riders and so many teams prepared to come to the front and share in the pacemaking. But you know, Bozenhagen, number 102 there, he must be thinking in the back of his mind, this could be a win for me here this afternoon. He's won. He's only been a professional since 2006, but you know, he's won himself at 63 races already.
Well, at the back of this group, talking to 63, number 163 is Rui Costa. He's the man that set up the breakaway yesterday in favour of his teammate Valverde. Valverde won. Now Costa's in the move today.
This is an amazing little priory here. This is the manor house of La Ramade de Friac. And it was this region, it's called the town of the 25 towers because of all the spires that you can see around the whole of this area. It goes back to the 5th century and was founded by the monks of the Abbey of Charroux.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for our trip around. as we now, this is the interesting part. So now we've got the breakaway on. Here's our Road ID Challenge fan predictions. You are saying 34% for Peter Sagan, Andre Greipel 10, Mark Cavendish 9 and Bradley Wiggins 5. Now you did say that, unlike me, before the stage began. I'll tell you a secret, before the stage began I went for Sagan, but then I thought the breakaway might succeed. So 34%, and it could still happen, believe me. Well, time's running out, but head on over to roadid.com/ride to make your prediction for tomorrow's stage winner. It's the time trial, by the way, and you'll be entered to win daily prizes and the 2013 Trek medal. Great prizes as we go back to the action. There's still a chance for this breakaway. It's hanging on, but there's still very much a chance here, but it will succeed. Saying it's on my computer now, it's back to 1:15. The peloton are getting their closest ever. Look at the flotilla of motorbikes and team cars. There were 14 teams represented in this breakaway. There are still 13 teams represented up front here. And the next climb, which might spoil the party or could indeed make the party, is coming up. There's only one more climb left to go. It's the Côte de l'Isaac, and we top it with 6 miles to run down to the finish. So, and we do have a GoPro camera in the car of Orica Green Edge today. As we look down there, they've got a man in the breakaway, and they're still looking for that stage win. Let's have a listen in and see what they're saying. That's Matt White.
As we stay up on this sort of level of altitude until kilometre 198, and then we descend for a while before we hit the last climb of the day. But Robbie said the last climb is nothing to worry about. It's a Cat 4, it's 1.9k at 5% average. But we stay up here till kilometre 198, then we start descending all the way to the bottom of that climb.
Well, that's Matt White at the Aussie there, and he's the one that said this breakaway will succeed. Well, I wonder if he still thinks that right now at 1:09. It's closing in pretty quickly. That's Bozenhagen driving it at the front. Rui Costa comes through. They're all willing to work. Vinokourov is next. Huge effort today by Orica Green Edge. They want to deliver one stage win to the owner of that team, a man called Jerry Ryan. He's an entrepreneur and loves the sport of cycling from Australia. But we're still looking to breakaway, now being driven on by David Miller here. They know how close the field is. Orica Green Edge, you've got Michael Albacini in the lead, and literally in the lead right now. He has a chance on the last climb. He could ride away on that last climb, and he knows it too, so the race won't chase him down from Orica at least. But if he gets caught, then watch out for Matty Goss to finish it off. There's a good move by Adam Hansen, and this is his big chance here, the Aussie from Queensland. This is how it happened. He accelerated. This is not an official King of the Mountains climb. This is just one of the undulations in the area of the Corrèze Valley, and he pushed on the pressure. Jeremy Auroy, the Frenchman, recognised it and has come right up behind him. So as we look here now, I think the group behind is going to be very concerned. We're closing in on the last climb of the day, which is a short and steep, 41 seconds the gap. A good move by Lotto, and what this is going to do, Paul, they're not going to come and send the men up in the chase now. They know what Adam Hansen is doing up here.
Yep, it could take a Lotto Belisol off the front end of the main field, but Phil, we're still only looking at a 40-second advantage. It's 18 seconds back to the remnants of the breakaway group. So right now we've got a situation where the breakaway group is halfway between the leading group of riders and the main field.
We are now just under 18 kilometres from the finish. These are not the leaders in the King of the Mountains green jersey and the race, because the peloton goes behind the donkeys and they are chasing it like thoroughbreds today. They are just 40 seconds or so. The gap is closing down. Computer is now saying as short as 40 seconds. So the breakaway is splitting, Paul. We've got Adam Hansen going clear. We've got Jeremy Roy. And if they're going to counter the attacks up front, the peloton is still far from certain they're going to close this gap down.
Well, I still think they will, Phil, because it's 25 seconds back to the main field and 40 seconds back to the peloton. So very shortly, the peloton will see the remnants of the breakaway and know there's 2 men left.
Hansen looks over his shoulder. This is the rider who in 2010 crashed out of the last time he rode the Tour de France on the first stage. But he's had a great tour this year, the man from Queensland, as he now sets the pace in the hope he can take the race to the finish. They're just about hanging on, these three, as they come up between the two leaders, but the peloton is only just around the corner. The gap, they're saying, is about 7 seconds as we now ride to the finish with today's stage of the Tour. As the Union flags fly there, Paul, the peloton is slowly but surely clawing its way up, and they're closing it in here. It is the climb which takes us over the top of the Côte de Lissac.
Well, I can only think, Phil, that all of a sudden Alexander Vinokourov recovered a fraction to try and come across the gap there, because he was never shown anywhere on the computers, and in fact they had said he'd gone back into the main field. But this three-man group, Luca Paolini is in there, Alexander Vinokourov, and it looks very much as if it's Nick Noyens.
It is, yeah, it is Noyens who's also there, and they've come together with Hansen and Roy. Only 5 survivors now, and about half a minute back to the main field. Now, can they hold off the field? David Miller has desisted. He has gone back, but there's still a healthy move here.
Yep, Alexander Vinokourov is an aggressive rider. He's seen this as an opportunity to try and get himself one final victory in the Tour de France before retirement, and he's jumped into these corners to open up a gap.
He is going again, and this is the perfect move by Alexander Vinokourov. He is the master of the lone escape, and he will never, ever give up. Not this close to the finish. He's only 13 kilometers away now, just over 7 miles.
Yes, but it was Adam Hansen took up the chaser right behind him. He knows that he needs to get onto the wheel of Alexander Vinokourov. Vinokourov looks down under his armpit there to see if he can see any shadows. He probably can't see it just yet, but I can tell him Adam Hansen is right on his wheel, and scuttling across in the red shorts there is Luca Paolini.
Well, Noyens also caught on the back foot there as the pressure gone on by the Kazakh rider here. Hansen's got across, but has he got the legs as they come up to the top of the climb?
Well, this is Luis Angel Mate in second position. He's a very aggressive rider from Cofidis, and they are now trying to escape the stranglehold of the main field. The main field, it's still locked in. Vinokourov wants some power to come to this breakaway group this afternoon. Throws out his arm and said, come on.
They've got to work together, and they've got to try and get round those corners out of sight of the peloton. Otherwise, they'll get the final jump on the race. This is through the little town of Lissac now, and boy, this has been a great race today with a lot of work being done. Look at the crowd here as they go up the climb. They're sprinting up this climb. It's like a flat road. Vinokourov is totally possessed.
No, he certainly is. It's now or never for these guys, Phil. They've got to hope that they can break the stranglehold of the main field over the next kilometre or so.
It's only 1.9 kilometres this climb, but it is quite steep here. This is Jeremy Roy and Nick Noyens. They're next up it. And how far back the peloton? They're saying they've actually dropped back a little bit from those leaders. Vinokourov's group's now 31 seconds. Here comes the peloton. Peter Weening on the front for the Orica Green Edge team, trying to drag the boys back in for Matthew Goss for the sprint.
Also riding at the front end of that group of riders is the world champion Mark Cavendish. He's not a great climber, but what he will do is ride this climb as close to the front as he can, and if he does slip back to 15th or 20th or 30th place, he will hope to go over the summit of the climb still in contact with the peloton.
The 3 leaders, these are the 2 chasers. They race up to the summit of the last climb of this day, and really the last serious climb of the Tour de France, as Vinokourov now tries to continue on this climb here. Luca Paolini, Adam Hansen. Third, 4th and 5th on the road too, but they can't be far ahead of the peloton, these 2.
Well, they're getting closer to the summit. You might just hear the crowd shouting Vino, Vino. That's for Vinokourov. He raced in France for most of the early part of his career. He lived in Saint-Etienne, and he was a very popular rider amongst the French.
And he's so strong, Paul. He's waved the others to come through. It's not that they won't, they can't at the moment.
Stewie O'Grady now comes to the front for Orica Green Edge, participating in his 16th Tour de France. As we go around, there's a lot of riders in trouble at the back of the peloton this afternoon. 1 kilometre to the summit for the leaders.
And once over the top of this, we're 10 kilometres from the finish, just 6 miles to run down. It's a tricky old finish across the town too. The riders who won the win will have paid a lot of attention to the finishing map over the last 2 kilometres as we go into Brive-la-Gaillarde. 10.8 kilometres, the peloton picking up the 2 chasers. They are that close.
Well, it's not a bad run-in for the sprinters. These two riders are in the breakaway a few moments ago. They're about to have the company of the peloton. The last 6Ks, Phil, around about 6 kilometres, 4 miles to go. There are 3 roundabouts as again Alexander Vinokourov hammers on those pedals.
Well, everybody's going to throw everything now. Now an attack by Omega, Orica Greenedge. No, it is Omega who's gone. They've also been the team that's been working very hard. This looks like, no, it's not. I thought it was Peter Vellich, but it isn't.
It looked very much like him, but it also looked like Sylvain Chavanel in the shade of this afternoon. But Sylvain Chavanel, he's at home. Rain Taramé is not having a great end to his tour as he disappears off the back.
Oh, he's dropped on the climb. I think he must be ill, actually. As we get up, the gap is now 12 seconds. These 3 boys are desperately close to the finish, but I'm not sure they're going to make it now. It's been a very powerful move, and Vinokourov will not give up here.
Well, this looks like Nicholas Roach, and they're not going to give him too much freedom this afternoon. Roach, he's high up in the overall standings, followed by Andreas Kloden, but they're just a little skirmish off the front end of the peloton, which I think once we go over the summit of the climb will come under the control of Orica Greenedge and Team Sky.
Well, Roach making a big effort there. His ambition is to finish in the top 10 in the Tour de France. He is 11th, and I think if I was Nicholas, I'd wait till tomorrow and try and save something for the time trial. Vinokourov is first over the top. There's only 1 point for the winner, nothing for anybody else. We are now at 10 kilometres to go, and these 3 riders are only just ahead of the field.
Well, we're not looking more than 5 or 10 seconds, the difference between Vinokourov and the rest of the peloton.
So the peloton commenced the chase down now. It's Nicholas Roach here trying to go clear of the chasers and join the front runners. 26 seconds the gap now as we look here at riders who are in trouble because the main field are still trying to hunt down these 3 riders, but the time check is absolutely nothing. They'll pray for every corner to keep them out of sight of the main front of the peloton.
Yes, but Phil, once they get off this descenter, they're into the outskirts of Brive-le-Gaillard. They're big, wide open boulevards, which gives the advantage to a team that can be well organised and make a very good lead out. I was just trying to say that at 6 kilometres to go, there's a series of 3 roundabouts, which are very, very precarious. But after then, they come into the Avenue Jacques Rousseau, and it is a massive big boulevard. It's a real sweeper where we'll see speeds of 60 kilometres an hour.
This is your man from Rabobank coming up on the 2 chasers. Luis Leon Sanchez to join Andreas Kloden and Nicholas Roach. If they catch up with these boys up front, this group may have the talent now to stay clear to the end.
Well, there is some firepower in this group. First of all, they've got to catch these guys. I'll tell you, Alexander Vinokourov is very, very nervous indeed. He keeps throwing his arm up. He wants this man Adam Hansen to work with him, but I'm not sure that Adam Hansen can. He's put a lot of pressure and work into the breakaway throughout the whole of the day. There are the 3 chasers, and there is the front end of the main field. It's all in a blooming newspaper.
We are 8 kilometres from the finish of today's stage of the Tour de France. 3 riders remain from the breakaway. 3 fresh pairs of legs, if that's the right term, are rapidly closing the gap. Nicholas Roach, Andreas Kloden and Luis Leon Sanchez are trying to reach now Adam Hansen, Luca Paolini, Alexander Vinokourov. He's tucked on the back here. He's clearly the strongest of these 3. The 3 chasers are coming up. Now the peloton is not that far behind, but our computer's given up. It won't even tell us where they are.
Well, that was Luca Paolini looking down the camera lens as Adam Hansen comes into second place, gets himself into a low-profile position, a ski-tuck position, if you like, to get himself aerodynamic. Vinokourov is nervous. He's trying to make this move succeed this afternoon, but he does know he's now being chased by Kloden, Roach and Luis Leon Sanchez. The main field, though, Phil, are only at 13 seconds.
They've put on a fantastic display, the riders in the Tour de France today, having left those 2 vicious days in the Pyrenees. No rest for these boys coming up to the time trial tomorrow. They have raced all the way. The peloton has never allowed the breakaway. At one time, it was 16 strong to escape. 3 survived from the breakaway. 3 fresh legs are coming up from the peloton. If 6 get together, they can hold them off.
You can just see a little bit of rain starting to come onto the camera lens, and with those 3 roundabouts, Phil, at 6 kilometres to go, it could be a recipe for disaster.
Okay, on the finishing line, though, nothing on my commentary box window as they go to the first of those roundabouts on the run in towards the line, and we'll enter the town of Brive. It's a very historic town downtown, and it's quite tricky.
Look how careful the peloton peloton has gone around that group there, the corner there, because it is very, very slippery on the surface. They will have to pick it up once they get into the boulevards. There's 2 more of these traffic circles, roundabouts for the main field to negotiate.
Look at the length of the line of the Tour de France now. 147 riders are in that long line. In that straight you could see them. The British flag is flying for who is in that group: Bradley Wiggins and indeed Chris Froome. These riders are racing for the stage win. There's no change in the leaderboard today as they follow those red arrows which say Arrivé.
Luis Leon Sanchez, already a victory under his belt so far this season, now has decided this is the moment to come up and hit them hard as possible. Nicolas Roche is trying to find something very special to get onto the wheel of the Spanish champion in the individual time trial.
It looks just like we're running into Foix as we were a few days ago, and the same rider was looking at a small group of riders and he jumped away to win. Luis Leon Sanchez not ready yet. Nicolas Roche, the former champion of Ireland, goes through 11th overall in the Tour.
Well, the gap now, Phil, on race radio, they say is down to just 10 seconds, and 10 seconds is around about 100 metres distance between these groups, the leading group of 6 riders and the main field. The peloton will have to get themselves organised. They've negotiated all of the roundabouts. Now they're in the boulevards, the safe part of this race.
Well, the polka dot jersey there, Thomas Vogler, he's just sitting out of this because he wants to stay safe to win that jersey in Paris. The peloton are under 5 kilometres to go at the moment.
Simon Guerin's coming out of the main field. They're trying to see whether or not he can get himself a victory for Orica Greenedge, but to do so he's got to get across this gap. And again, everybody's scuttling along, and there's still no big acceleration coming from Team Sky, but they are very much in control of the peloton. Locked into the wheel of Bradley Wiggins is Mark Cavendish, the world champion.
Everybody's 100% committed here. The face there on Vasily Kirienka just trying to drive from the front. This is the group now. They've got to continue. This is Kirienka here, just the advanced scout for the peloton, which is still screaming down. We're heading for the 4-kilometre banner, and the peloton now, everybody for himself.
Adam Hansen looks over his shoulder into the face of Nicolas Roche to try and figure out and judge his effort. He knows now there are 4 kilometres to go to the finish. Roche puts that little signal out there to say, come on guys, we've got to keep working. If we're going to hold off the main peloton here this afternoon, we have to work together.
I'm just counting, Paul, hang on. 12 seconds is the gap under that banner. 4 kilometres it is to the finish. These boys are together. Andreas Klöden looks over his shoulder. Flick of the elbow means you come through, Nicolas. Watch Nicolas, he'll do the same any second now. And the Vinokourov is waiting now just to have a final dash to the finish by himself.
Coming across to the gap there, and the wheel of Andreas Klöden is, of course, the man from Spain, Luis Leon Sanchez. This is Daniel Oss on the front. I'm looking down that line there to see. I can still see in the second row, if you like, the black, blue and white jerseys of Team Sky. Third in the line there of those riders is Bradley Wiggins in the yellow jersey. Fourth in that line is Mark Cavendish.
This is Leon Sanchez getting a good look and seeing there's still a workable gap there. 3 kilometres to go is the magical distance as far as timing for today's stage go, because if there was to be an accident in that main field, all riders will be given the same time, and that would mean that Bradley Wiggins will be perfectly safe. There is the 3 for the leading group. They are under that now. They are clear. They will get a different time if they were to fall. But look at the faces on these riders. Now this is Nertz again for Liquigas.
Well, they're just about to get pulled at 3 kilometres for the
shot.
It's about 10 seconds the gap. 8 seconds is the official time gap, Phil, at 3 kilometres to go. And on the front of this group, but absolutely hammering along. Can't see round there, but it looks like it's still Nicolas Roche.
It's still Roche. Andreas Klöden looks to be just hanging on to the coattails of Luca Parolini, and this is they dropped him. Vinokourov was tailed off the back. He's trying to rejoin. Roche is a man possessed because Nicolas Roche is looking to gain a few seconds and get closer to finishing 10th overall in the Tour de France.
Well, Christian van der Velde in the middle there with the blue helmet. He's coming to the front. That must mean that in that mix somewhere is Tyler Farrar, the American sprinter. He maybe has survived the climbs here this afternoon, and he'll be looking for a victory if he can. The sprinters now, Phil, are all starting to queue up, but to win, they've got to catch the leading group, and you know, I think they're going to maybe do it inside of the last kilometre.
What an incredible day of racing as we come to the last working day week of the Tour de France. Tomorrow we start the last weekend. They are just there at 2 kilometres to go. everybody is at the limit of their speed. They're crawling their way back to those leaders.
No, they certainly are. They haven't quite got to the tail end there. The man making the effort as they go under the railway line there was Luis Leon Sanchez, and he knew that he had to make the effort at this moment if he had to hold off this storming main field here this afternoon. Into the tunnel, out of the tunnel, and it's still Nicholas Roach in the lead. On his wheel, Andreas Kloden.
Well, Roach is turning out to being a great find in this year's Tour de France. He's really developed with the talent we always knew he had. This Irishman, the son of Stephen, and Stephen now is watching this on television, the winner of the Tour in 1987.
Wiggins has come to the front in the yellow jersey, Phil, and locked onto his wheel is Mark Cavendish. Is he going to give him a 1.5 kilometre lead out? That would be quite amazing as Kloden look back. They're all looking back now, wondering where is the main field? Will they catch us here this afternoon?
Well, Wiggins on his own is capable in his track racing days of doing a kilometre in 1 minute without any assistance. There he is. He's got Bozenhagen behind him, the world champion Cavendish locked in. That's Andrei Grivko of Ukraine, who they've just gone flying by. And can he do it? Because very soon we are seeing 1 kilometre to the finish, and Adam Hansen is seeing stars now because he could win this.
Well, they're round the corner now. There's not very much more than 2 or 3 seconds. It's now being left up to Edvald Bozenhagen. Locked onto his wheel is Mark Cavendish. They've still got to catch those 6 survivors of the breakaway here this afternoon. Moving up on the outside is Lotto Belisson looking after their man, and that, of course, Andre Greipel. They're taking one more final bend, one sweeper here as the main field just makes the junction as Hansen comes up, as Cavendish comes up onto the wheel of one of the lead-out men from Lotto Belisol.
500 metres to go. The breakaway is still clear, but the attack is coming. A final effort by the white jersey of Bozenhagen. Cavendish is going to have to come from a long way down. Nicholas Roach is opening up the sprint. Luis Leon Sanchez and Paulina going. Here comes the missile. The white jersey grits his teeth. He chases Luis Leon Sanchez. He locks in, but can he get by? Roach is so close to winning this. He swings across the road. Cavendish has just won his 2nd stage of the Tour de France. He joins the great sprinter Andre Darrigard with 22 wins in the Tour de France. What a finish, and that's got to be one of his best ever victories.
That finish, Phil, came from about 10 riders back. The rain just starting to come out of the clouds here above Brive-le-Gaillard, and this man, look at that relief, joy, the mountains are behind him. Yes is the only thing they could say, with a very, very traditional victory salute.
Absolutely superb cycling. What a great day of racing. It was so close for Stephen Roach also, whose last win was in the Tour de Beijing last year. But look at the speed.
Unbelievable. This man was a man who wanted the win.
He is a missile. When they fired him, he usually hits the target. Today is no exception. He's got his win again in the Tour de France. The other one was in the first couple of days. Now he's come back in the last couple of days.
Tell me, Phil, how many men are going to bet against Mark Cavendish on Sunday on the Champs-Élysées? Well, I won't.
Well, I think Matthew Goss again played the bridesmaid. He will have crossed the line there in 2nd place. So we're looking at the melee here. At the moment, this is the President of France, who hasn't won the stage of the Tour de France, but is getting all the press photographer here. This is Francois Hollande, the new President of France, but very soon we are going to see the rest of the riders come in. And these boys sat up on the climb. Their race was over. Thomas Vogler at the back, just coming home. That was a terrific day of racing today, because that breakaway worked so hard to win, and it was only, 300 metres before they were caught.
Now, I tell you what, that was a well-timed lead out, and again, Bradley Wiggins paying something back to the team there, Phil, because he waited, he rode for a good 1.5 kilometres to bring them just to the tail end of that group. Then it was left up to Edvald Bozenhagen. Edvald Bozenhagen brought Mark Cavendish up to the tail end of the group of 6. He got his breath for a fraction of a second, but when he opened up the burners, bang!
Well, Brive-le-Gaillard, we thought it might be a stage to send us all to sleep. The opposite was absolutely true today. It was a terrific day of racing. And hats off to the riders who left 2 tough days in the Pyrenees. The result is that Mark Cavendish gets his 2nd stage win, Matthew Goss gets 2nd, Peter Sagan gets 3rd, Luis Leon Sanchez 4th, and 5th, Nicholas Roach hung on. Looking further down, Tyler Farrar As we continue, Borec, Bocic, and then Sebastian Hinault. There's the full list for you. Daryl Impey, again the Orica Green Edge South African Paul, having a great day out. He's right there in 9th, and Samuel Dumoulin keeping the top 10.
Well, you'll be certain that Daryl Impey was an integral part of Matty Goss getting himself second place on the running towards the finish. As we look at the Touraine, the small medieval village, which is not far away from the finishing line here. But we've seen a great battle today, Phil. A battle which sort of resembles the medieval times, the way it was run out.
Indeed, indeed. You see the reflection of the big crowd through his goggles there. Little sips of water. And you probably heard that youngster shout, "Come on, Wiggo." That's his nickname, and is actually the name he carries on his racing jersey. He knows now he's just a matter of 33 miles from being the winner of the Tour de France tomorrow in Paris. No British rider has ever done it. It's the 99th Tour de France, or remotely done it, I might add. The biggest moment in cycling history for sure. For Bradley Wiggins, the biggest moment of his career, though he's got Olympic golds and World Championship golds on the track. This is the Tour de France. Wiggins knows now he is a matter of 53 kilometres away from being the first British winner of the Tour de France. Proud moment indeed. He's waiting for the countdown, and he goes out of the start house, last of the 153 riders, the privileged position of the leader of the Tour de France.
Well, the choice of equipment, Phil, a solid disc wheel at the back, 3 battened wheel at the front, and the crowd, I think, were on his side.
The countdown. The flags and the cheers. History in the making now. The man in all yellow, with parts of his bike in yellow as well, settles down now to lay down the final foundations of victory tomorrow in Paris. What man in here? He is flying through the streets here in France, bound towards Chartres. It's not far from the check now. He passes the 40 kilometres to go. At the first check, it is Chris Froome best time, 17 minutes and 1 second. Watch the banner, because that should give it away before we get it on the computer. It's in the sky below Festina, and what is it? 16:49, surely not. That's 11 seconds quicker than Froome.
Well, it's actually 12 seconds quicker than Froome, and you can see the flags are actually starting to pick up now, Phil, at this time of the afternoon. He has gone through there very, very quickly indeed, Bradley Wiggins, and he knows he has to go out quickly. He wants to assassinate the field in the individual time trial. He knows the history and tradition of the sport. He wants to win this time trial and then head up into Paris.
Well, it's not yet confirmed, but what is known is he's the only rider of the 153 who's gone inside. It is confirmed at 16:49. 12 seconds quicker than Chris Froome. Everything on course for a 1-2 in Paris tomorrow for the British.
Well, he looks very cool currently. He's got his visor on the front of his helmet there. In the previous time trial, halfway towards the end, he actually ripped that visor off because he felt he was overheating inside of his helmet. He uses that helmet to be part of his aerodynamics, to keep him as aerodynamic as possible at the front end of the machine. He has a very impressive position. He's really stretched out over the front end of the machine, and he's chasing his own teammate on the road. But Froome, Phil, has done a phenomenal job here. I mean, just to be 12 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins is a serious reference.
And especially
TJ Van Garderen would have had to have done an exceptional performance this afternoon. Don't forget, this man is a top contender when it comes to the Tour de France. The Belgians had hoped that he was going to finish inside of the top 3 in this year's event, but you know, he lost 2 minutes, Phil, in one of the early stages when he had a mechanical problem before the summit finish in Plateau de Belleville.
Well, he's deserved this. He's been a good battler in the Pyrenees and in the Alps. Van Garderen's time 1:06:47 meant that this rider must clock 1:09:24 to lose his 4th place. It is a long way up, but he's going to do it quite comfortably here. This is when he gets a shot of the clock as he comes off this bend. Now he can see the time. If he's worked it out, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Jurgen van den Broek has given Belgium a big cheer here because he holds on to 4th place in the Tour de France.
Well, he's lost 2:31, but more importantly, he's held on to his 4th place in the overall standings. But for that 2 minutes that he lost because of a mechanical incident in the early days of the Tour de France, he could have been staring down the barrel of a 3rd place finish in this year's Tour.
Vincenzo Nibali, the lonely Italian here, as he's tried to take on the might of the British Sky team, and he's failed, but he will be on the podium in Paris tomorrow. He will conserve 3rd place. He's not far from the finish now as he looks for the final kilometre into the finishing line. So there it is, 1 kilometre to go, and a reminder, today's commercial free, brought to you by Competitive Cyclists. Go to competitivecyclist.com to see more. He's heading home, 800 metres. Well, he's challenging the time of Richie Porte at the moment, but he's not going to reach that time. But Nibali is only interested in 3rd place now in the Tour de France. He's run up against the 2 quickest time trialists out, I would suggest, in the world right now, Froome and Wiggins. Sounds like a solicitor's, doesn't it? As Nibali comes home now, he will consolidate 3rd in the Tour de France, and still Luis Leon Sanchez just watches on from the finish. He knows the inevitable, though, is about to happen. But for the moment, Nibali, the 3rd last man on the course, the 3rd man in Paris tomorrow, is coming home, and it is a very, very good time.
It's a very impressive time by a man who is better reputed as being a mountain climber, the man who likes it when the roads go up to the summits of the Alps and the Pyrenees. But here this afternoon, he's using a discipline of the sport which is not his own, the individual time trial, to keep himself in 3rd place in the overall standings.
As he comes home, he might even scrape into the top 12 here, and that's the quality of a man fighting the podium. As he comes round that bend and continues up the climb to the finish, he has done enough to keep 3rd in the Tour de France, and I think that's not far off. His ambition, of course, was to win it, but now with a 14th place today, a loss of 1 minute 47 to the Spanish champion. And now look at this, because not very far behind him, he started 3 minutes back of him, Chris Froome is approaching the finish here, and this is the time which will take Luis Leon Sanchez off the leaderboard, as Chris Froome will go number 1, albeit only for about 2 minutes. Froome to finish 2nd in the Tour de France in Paris tomorrow, as he just keeps looking at the clock and driving to the finish. This confirms his 2nd place in Paris. He hits the line with the best time for now, 34 seconds quicker than Luis Leon Sanchez.
Well, you know, Phil, just looking at these riders here, it makes you think that the Olympic Games individual time trial is going to be a very dramatic race. It's not in a 3-week stage race like the Tour de France, but we're seeing some phenomenal performances. 1:05.29 for Chris Froome is a phenomenal performance, but you know what? In 1 minute's time, Bradley Wiggins is going to get to the finish line because he's gone under 1,000 metres to go.
And he has never, ever faltered, as he didn't in the other time trial, which he won in the yellow jersey. But this one in the yellow jersey is it, because tomorrow he changes the yellow jersey as leader to yellow jersey as the first British winner of the Tour de France. It is cheers all of the way, and I can tell you an awful lot of these people are from the United Kingdom. Flags wave in front of Bradley Wiggins as he makes the final approach. The time of Chris Froome, 1 hour, 5 minutes and 29 seconds. I think this guy will be a long 1 hour, 3 minutes ride as he comes up towards the line.
Well, he will not stop until he's crossed that line. He wants to raise the bar very, very high here this afternoon. He's extending his lead over everybody else in the Tour de France, but this was ridden for pride. This was ridden for tradition. This was ridden to prove that he's the strongest man in the Tour de France 2012.
He turns for home now. It just goes outside at 1 hour, 4 minutes. It's a winning ride. It's a winning ride to win the Tour de France, as Bradley Wiggins licks his lips in anticipation and punches the sky. You don't often see that in a time trial, but you've just seen the winner of the Tour de France cross the line.
Well, this is the moment, Phil, when he knows. Look at that. That's the first real sign we've had of emotion from Bradley Wiggins since we left Liège about 3 weeks ago.
There's no more challenges on this route for him now. Just champagne on the streets of France. Stage win, albeit a second time trial win for Bradley Wiggins in 1:4:13. Chris Froome, his teammate, a minute 16 back. Luis Leon Sanchez, a brilliant ride, I have to add, by Luis Leon, 150 back. Peter Velic was the next man. He pulled something special out today as well. TJ Van Garderen went for that 4th place. He faded a little bit towards the end, but nonetheless, he's now set to go to Paris in 5th place in the Tour de France. Rain Talamay 9th, and Jeremy Roy competing the top 10, 3 minutes and 5 seconds off the pace of Bradley Wiggins today. The pressure is off. The job is done, and he thanks everybody. So as Bradley gets ready for the prize presentation and his next leader's yellow jersey before he changes it for the winners, we'll see what else we can show you here. Still in yellow, of course. 3:21 is now the time gap. It was 2:05 to Chris Froome. 6 minutes and 19 seconds to Vincenzo Nibali, 10 minutes and 15 to Van den Broek, and 11 minutes and 4 seconds to TJ Van Garderen. These are big time gaps now, aren't they? Heimar Zubeldia up to 6th today, but 15:43 back. Cadel Evans, the defending champion, down to 7th. Pierre Rolland, you see, he did hold on to his 8th place as best Frenchman. Yanis Brakovic closed, but didn't quite catch him in 9th. And Thibaut Pinot completes the top 10, and he's the youngest rider in the race. Further down, Andreas Kloden has had another great Tour de France for Radio Shack Nissan. 11th for him. Nicholas Roach eventually plunging from 11th down to 12th. Hardly a plunge, is it? Chris Horner 13th, started there and finishes there. Chris Anker Sorensen hung on to 14th, almost out of the race with his injured fingers. Denny Menchoff in 15th place. Paul, as we look at the multicoloured jersey of Thomas Voeckler, that there's been no champagne drunk as far as I could see. Now, you would think if you're about to win £500,000 on the Champs-Élysées, they could have afforded a bottle of champagne back there.
I think they'd rather have it out of proper crystal glasses after the finish in an ice-cold situation. There's the site that all of these riders have been looking for, Phil. There is the Eiffel Tower. What would Paris be without it? It was built at the end of the 1800s for the Expo. It was only supposed to be there for 4 years, and here it is still over 120 years later.
Well, they can't see it. We could see it from our helicopter there, but they will see it very shortly because they're approaching now Issy-les-Moulineaux, which is based on the side of the Seine, some way out of town. Mark Cavendish craning his neck there just to have a laugh with the boys. This is an incredible achievement by Team Sky. They went into this race as a team. They never deviated from Wiggins' victory. They're coming home as a team too.
Building, you can just see around here, Phil, is the home of Radio France as we continue to meander down the centre of the River Seine here. This is a great place to have a bike race, and I have to say, just looking out, this is probably one of the most beautiful days that we've seen for the final stage of the Tour de France in Paris for many, many years.
It is, and thank heavens, because it can be very dangerous on the cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées. On the few wet days that we have finished here, the riders have taken crashing their bikes right to the very last day. It's 73 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment, light winds and blue skies all of the way. Reflecting perhaps the first yellow jersey ever for a British cyclist.
Yeah, great to be able to have a look up at the Eiffel Tower. It's amazing to think, Phil, that it was built in 1889 for the Expo, and it was supposed to celebrate the centenary of the French Revolution. It was only supposed to stand there for 4 years and then get taken down. It weighs 7,000 tons, and it has to have an extra 50 tons of paint put on every 7 years.
A remarkable statistic is that. Well, they're running down the River Seine. They're now in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. They're very shortly, in a few kilometres, swing left. They'll go under the underpass. They'll come down the Rue de Tuileries. They'll race across the Place de la Concorde. They will be on to the Champs-Élysées. And once they are there, they will do 8 full circuits, and I can assure you they will not be riding like this. They will open up the tanks because it's the last stage of the Tour de France. It's the stage that every single cyclist coming to Paris would love to win.
They certainly would. It's a great place to have a bike race. So you can just see the Trocadero. That's the building on the opposite side of the River Seine, as you can see. By the way, this building is 317.7 meters high, and it was at one time the highest construction in the world till it was beaten by the Chrysler skyscraper in Manhattan, and that was only in 1930.
Stood well. Well, the big battle once we're on there, of course, the sprinters, Team Sky, bringing home the first two riders. They also want to finish it off with a result for Mark Cavendish, the world champion from the Isle of Man. There are a lot of people here from the Isle of Man, and we can tell by the flags. You'll probably see them when you come onto the Champs-Élysées with us shortly. And he's won here every time he's finished in Paris, Mark Cavendish. That's 3 times he's made Paris, 3 times he's won the final stage. He has a massive 22 stage victories, far and away the most. And those 22 victories, by the way, now equal the stage wins by the other great sprinter, André Dalligard of France, who sent his message of congratulations to Mark Cavendish for that achievement.
Down in the middle there, just at the bottom, is the Place de la Concorde. That is the Jardin De Trillery. Just the riders will circumnavigate on this circuit around here, and it gets its name, the Tuileries, from the fact that they used to actually quarry clay here, and the clay was used to make the roof tiles that were bound around the whole of Paris.
All 153 survivors of the 198 are now heading on to the Champs-Élysées. Look at that crowd. The flags of Norway for Edvald Bozenhagen.
And looking down, as she always does, at Joan of Arc.
Now we run down the far right there, running across. There's the Place de la Concorde ahead, and then on the straight road of the Champs-Élysées. Team Sky bring them home here, and George Hincapie, the American, 17 Tours de France, an absolute record. They've given him the right of way. A big proud moment for George Hincapie this. He retires this year. He's had 19 years as a pro, and he's ridden the Tour de France a record 17 times, and he's worn the yellow jersey, albeit only once.
And on his wheel, the other old rider in this bike race, Chris Horner, gives the honour.
He's won a stage of the Tour de France, in Cotteret it was.
Yeah, so they've given him the honour of riding onto the Champs-Élysées in first place with Chris Horner.
The Madeleine in the backdrop as they make the right. This will be the last corner in 8 laps time for the sprinters, but right now that long line of riders, it's no longer a tourist ride around France. It is now back to the last stage. The crowd welcome them home.
This is Christian Knies. He's done a lot of work on the front end of this main field as they've ridden around Paris. I wonder if Hincapie is going to lead anybody out down towards the end.
So he goes through, and he's got Chris Horner on his back wheel, the American rider who will finish the Tour in 13th place overall. Another top finish for Chris Horner on Team Radio Shack, the team that will win the team prize. This time around, last year it was the Garmin team, also American, who won the team prize.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, when you are in the main field like this and you come onto the Champs-Élysées, you can hear the crowd, you can almost feel the crowd. There are so many people there, 6 and 7 deep around the whole of this 3-kilometre part of the course up and down the Champs-Élysées.
Now, George has started the ball rolling. Who's going to finish off? Here comes Andrei Grifko, the champion of Ukraine, who's decided now the party's over, it's time to race.
Everybody now is scrambling to find that last little bit of energy to try and nail back these 3 riders. Race Radio is saying it's 24 seconds, the distance between the 3 men. We're looking at Minard, the Frenchman, in first position, Jens Voigt in second position, and Rui Costa in third position there, the Portuguese rider on the Spanish Movistar team.
We've gone under the 10-kilometre banner now as Jens Voigt, this man who's 41 years of age and goes faster as he gets older, pumps those pedals down the Champs-Élysées, heading out to the Place de la Concorde now for the penultimate time. Next time they come up it, they'll get the bell for the last lap, and they haven't closed it down. In fact, they haven't gone anywhere. It is still 21 seconds.
Well, the main field is spreading across the Champs-Élysées. That's an indication that there's a little bit of pressure coming out of the chase from the main field this afternoon, and that will give the advantage to the 3 men now who are swinging onto the Place de la Concorde, Phil, for the penultimate time. When they come up to the line this time, they will hear the bell indicating 1 lap to go.
But win or lose the stage today, this has been the stage for Team Sky and for Great Britain, because Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome now are going to finish first and second in the Tour de France. It has never been done before. It is totally unprecedented in an event that began back in 1903. It is an outstanding sporting achievement that people here are comparing with Britain's World Cup victory in soccer in 1966.
Well, this is it is the biggest annual sporting event in the world. It's only beaten by the World Cup and the Olympic Games, but they only come around every 4 years. And what a performance by Bradley Wiggins if he wins the Tour de France in the same year as the Olympics and goes on to win an Olympic gold in the individual time trial.
We'll have to wait a couple of more days to find out the second part of that, Paul, but right now there's no doubt he's going to win the Tour de France. The clock is saying 21 seconds. Someone is going to have to make a superhuman effort from that bunch to put the sprinters back in the Tour de France for the finish.
Well, as they swing underneath the tunnel now, as they go underneath the Louvre Museum, they're coming around here for the penultimate time, and they've still got 22 seconds advantage over the main field. I can't believe that they will hold off on this final lap, but you never know, Phil. This has been a very strange and interesting tour this year.
Well, a lap ago, I would have agreed with you, but a lap ago, it was 22 seconds, and we've only got 7.5 kilometres to go. Once we get the bell, it's 6 kilometres from the finish, and the sprinters teams have not got back on terms. Incredible riding by Sébastien Minard, Jens Voigt and Rui Costa. Three rivals on different teams helping each other to hold off the field in the Tour de France.
Just noticed moving on to the back wheel of Mark Cavendish, the Australian national champion Simon Gerrans. He's putting himself there to hopefully later on exchange places with Matty Goss. A lot of riders are queuing up for the wheel of Mark Cavendish. They know he's the big favourite to win this stage here this afternoon, and all they'll be hoping for will be to try and get into his slipstream, and that the man from the Isle of Man makes a mistake.
7 kilometres to go as you run towards the Place de la Concorde. They've got 4 members of the Italian Liquigas Cannondale team trying to bring this back. Waiting in the wings are the riders from Orica Green Edge for Matty Goss, and also Team Sky for Cavendish. These three boys have not slowed down. They've really turned on the style today, and they're going across now towards what will be the last kilometre next time around.
It's going to be a nail-biter, this final lap, 6 kilometres up the Champs-Élysées, back down around the Jardin De Trillery, down the Rue de Rivoli, and then it will be the final charge onto the Champs-Élysées. It's down to 18 seconds.
We swing onto the Champs-Élysées. It's the bell this lap. These three riders have suddenly come back to just 16 seconds, but they'll get the bell. They will be inspired. Jens Voigt leads the charge, and the peloton with Mark Cavendish and Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome are just 16 seconds behind. The three leaders are through. The bell continues to ring. It is desperate moments now on the sprinters teams. There is Mark Cavendish. He's just hoping now that the three riders up front are brought to heel.
Well, it's Wiggins wears the yellow jersey. Just behind him, Mark Cavendish is the man that he's going to try and launch into the attack to try and get himself a victory on the final stage.
Well, normally Wiggins would sit up and he'd wave to the crowd while they sprinted out, but not this time. Wiggins has promised to try and lead Mark Cavendish to victory. Now, Mark Cavendish has never lost a finish on the Champs-Élysées. He's been here 3 times. He's won every time. I think there's a crash in the peloton. Somebody's gone down. Well, that is a real shame. 2 riders down there, one from AG2R, I think, and one from Lampre.
Well, this is how dangerous this race is going to be, and everyone is taking risks. It looks as if that's Danilo Hondo on the far side there, one of the sprinters. It happened, I think, right up in the front of the main field. Hondo just touching the wheel there of a rider in front of him, and he went down very, very hard indeed. It doesn't affect any of the riders sitting at the front end of the main field, but it just goes to exaggerate how dangerous the Tour de France can be on any kilometre of this 4,000 kilometre journey around France.
I have a feeling it was the sprinter of Team AG2R, Sebastian Eno, who went out there at that point. Mark Cavendish, though, moving safely up the near side now, his concentration. He is the fastest road finisher in the world, that's undisputable, but you've got to be in the right position to win. They are just about all together now, as Wiggins also moving into position, but Cavendish got to know that over his shoulder is Peter Sagan, who's won 3 stages of this Tour as well this time.
Not far away from the Cavendish-Sagan duo there is also Matty Goss, the Australian from Orica Greenedge, in the mix. In the front 15 positions is also Andrea Greipel. The race radio now is saying Gruppo Compacto in Italian, which means the group is now back all together.
They're all together, but they're very, very stressed indeed. But Team Sky have organised themselves. They've got the front of the bunch here. Wiggins, the leader and soon-to-be winner of the Tour de France, moves into second place behind Michael Rogers. Edvard Bozenhagen is third. Mark Cavendish is fourth. Peter Sagan, who will challenge him, is in the all-green jersey.
Well, in front of him is his teammate from Liquigas, that's Daniel Ossen. He's normally the lead-out man, the pilot fish for Peter Sagan when it comes down to these sprints. Matty Goss is in the middle of the mix there as well. On the left-hand side, you can start to see the organisation and the lead-out coming from Lotto Belisol.
And off to the left of our picture there is the man on Lotto, which is Andre Greipel here, while still it's Saxo Bank trying to deliver JJ Haido to the finishing line. We're going underground for the last time, and it'll be all action when they 1.5 kilometres from the finish.
In the first 5 places, I noticed in the blue helmet moving up there was the American sprinter Tyler Farrar. You've got to stay calm when you're a sprinter like this. You have to have confidence in the men around you, and that's what Mark Cavendish is doing right now. He's still locked onto the wheel of Bradley Wiggins and his teammate just in front of him, Edvald Bozenhagen, as we go past Norwegian corner.
You will see the bridge across the road has been waving throughout, but this time it really is 1 kilometre from the finish. And now Bradley Wiggins, the winner of the Tour de France, is moving Edvard Bozenhagen in front of Mark Cavendish. The Sky train is all set to roll at 1 kilometre to go.
Well, they're inside of 1 kilometre to go. It's a big battle to try and get into the slipstream of Mark Cavendish. This man who was an Olympic gold medalist in the individual pursuit, Bradley Wiggins, is eating his heart out right now for his teammate behind him. He wants to pay back the world champion, but there's a lead out trying to come by there from Orica Greenedge, and that of course was Albacini.
Now, as we go now is the lineup for the finish. It's Edvard Bozenhagen and it's in perfect position, but watch out, Sagan is on the offside as we're heading up towards the final turn. This is a brilliant lead out by the champion of Norway on Team Sky. Bozenhagen, it's a perfect finish for Mark Cavendish. He's brought into the straight so far ahead. It's familiar, the missile is firing and he doesn't get past. Look at his face. He makes it look all too easy, but that is the story of the Tour de France. Has he, yes, he's clear. Mark Cavendish gets 4 out of 4 wins in the last 4 years in Paris. This is the end of a perfect Tour de France for Great Britain. Sagan would have got second there. The yellow jersey for Bradley Wiggins, the first ever to win for Great Britain. He shakes hands with Michael Rogers of Australia. Behind Wiggins is Chris Froome, who finishes second. It just is all too perfect.
Amazing there. The congratulations coming from all quarters for this man, Bradley Wiggins. But I'll tell you one thing, Phil, this man is very, very special. This is Mark Cavendish here. He's got his full flight on when he comes up to the finishing line, and there's nobody else in the photo there. He puts 4 hands up to say 4 times I have been the winner here on the Champs-Élysées, and that extends his tally of victories on stages of the Tour de France to 23.
Unbelievable. 4 years in a row he has come up the most famous road and he has won. This time will be very special because he has the rainbow stripes as the reigning world champion. 4 fingers to the world.
But Phil, if you look at the guys behind him, that's a reference in the who's who of sprinting.
A brilliant lead out. A brilliant lead out by the yellow jersey of the Tour de France as he now salutes his team here, which has been exceptional. And Bradley Wiggins is the winner of the Tour de France in the 99th edition. When he comes back next year, he'll have the unprecedented privilege for a British rider of starting with number 1 on his back.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, the sprinters behind him, you see here, he goes from a long, long way out, Mark Cavendish. He loves this finishing straight. Right on his wheel there is Matty Goss. But watch Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan is a long way back. He was actually gapped there by Edvald Bozenhagen. He comes right the way back up to the wheel of the Australian. Look at him moving forward. That's then JJ Hayedo coming forward in the blue and yellow jersey. Sagan gets second, Matty Goss third, JJ Hayedo is fourth.
But the winning margin, it was so large, wasn't it? He won by lengths, as always, when he sees the front first. Let's just have a look in the team car, because I think we recorded their reaction here.
You got it. Come on.
Unbelievable. Sky, you note, they're normally blue, but they've changed all their strip to yellow. Cars as well. This is Cavendish when he arrived at the finish. And I think he was actually beckoning there to the yellow jersey to come and join him. Around the winner of the Tour de France, while the winner of his 23rd stage in history, Mark Cavendish, is still unbeaten on the Champs-Élysées, the first cyclist ever to win 4 times, and it's been that way since 2009. Just for the record, Peter Sagan was second, Matthew Goss got third, and this is Delilah, which is Mark's newborn. And Peter, his partner, just off camera, I think. So let's start with the stage result. Cavendish wins. All same time today. Peter Sagan, Matthew Goss, JJ Hayedo and Chris Bockmans of Belgium. They're all sprinters, but they saw today that there's one sprinter a little bit better than anybody else when he wants to be. As Cavendish gets the victory. The top 5 on the stage. And further down, Greg Henderson, who will have tried to lead out Andre Greipel, but it didn't work today because Greipel was 8th. Bozenhagen faded to finish 9th after he launched Cavendish. Jimmy Engelvent, who's a sprinter on the Seo Sojourn team from France, he was in 10th place today. And then the peloton right on the heels, and in the centre of that peloton was Bradley Wiggins. And right behind Bradley, making sure he stayed safe all of the way, was Chris Froome, who finishes the race in 2nd place. He's the second guy in black here. Shakes his head in disbelief.